Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Bliss Podcast, Speedy Edition, because it's almost time for bed. And we just got into a new hotel here in London. Again, the fourth hot hell that the Bliss has moved into in a very short period of time.
Is it a hotel or is it a torture chamber?
It's a hot hell, which is a combination of the two. Actually, this time it really lives up to the name Hot Hell, I have to say. I just got back from the Lidl, and as I walked into the room, I felt like I was walking into a brick wall. It was so humid and hot in this hot hell. It's like a bhajan coated in India. So, anyway, we're here now by the mercy of Krishna, and we are continuing to do podcasts every Monday and live streams every single day and special events occasionally. It's really, if you haven't been on our Facebook, have you been on our Facebook? Why haven't you been on our Facebook? It's very nice. We do live streams every single day, sometimes twice a day. His Grace Spiritual Prabhu is giving classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. We're doing Zoom calls with many devotees. Sometimes upwards of 20 devotees are there on both the platforms, discussing, asking questions, interacting face to face, soul to soul, discussing Krishna consciousness. It's really ecstatic. So, if you haven't been already, I don't know why. You're missing out. You already missed out on so much content. It's nigh impossible for you to go and catch up because we have so much there. But if you have, you can try. Why not? Why not try? So you can go now. I'm going to link that in the description for your easy access. I'm going to serve it to you on a silver platter. Hare Krishna. So you can nicely access our Facebook links. We also have many podcasts already done, of which this is the... I'm not going to even try to count. I'm not even going to try it. This podcast is based on a question that I asked on the live stream because I was running out of ideas of what I'm going to do for a podcast. So I asked the devotees there, what should we do? What should we talk about? And I decided to pick one of the many options there by a Mataji, or a mother, that's the English term, a nice lady called Alina. She suggested that I discuss why are we even worshipping Krishna? Why should I worship Krishna? Which is a very important question if you want to be happy. Let's put it like that. Okay, so just a couple things. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the podcast itself, I already mentioned the Bliss News pretty much, but I'm just going to elaborate on it a little bit. We are trying to we're trying to establish a temple in London. It got a little usurped, our plan, because the landlords, hopefully they're not watching this. I don't want to speak too badly of them, but I don't think they are. Even though actually, in one of our previous places we were staying in London, the roommates we were staying with, they actually were listening to our podcast regularly to actually find out what the hell are these people we're living next to dressed in orange robes. What are they doing? Chanting all these mantras and stuff. So they were actually listening to our podcast to find out what's going on. And I think they were kind of addicted. They were listening regularly. And they were pointing out things to our landlord about what we were saying on the podcast, and so anyway,
They wanted to kick us out.
Yeah, they even used it to kick us out. So maybe they're still listening. Maybe they become big fans of the podcast. Thank you if you're listening, roommates. Also, there's a package there that's waiting for me. So if you're still there, please save that. I'm gonna come pick it up later. Thank you. So we got kicked out from our last place. We've moved many times here in London. We've pretty much been around the whole London already. And we were moved because the landlord didn't properly plan things out with the planning commission, aka the place was not suitable for human living. Of course, if you come into a brahmachari ashram, Hare Krishna ashrama temple, you will think it's not ready for living. Just like we were in Spain once upon a long time ago, and the landlord came in there, and me and Pujit were sleeping on the bare ground, and she really freaked out But how is possible for people to live just by sleeping in robes on the ground, and there's basically nothing, no furniture, there's nothing there. So people freak out, but it's possible. Anyway, my point is that we can live in a almost uninhabitable condition, but apparently the government doesn't think like that, so we were moved out of that place, and now we are constantly moving from hot hell to hot hell, looking for a new place. And I think we found a kind of a nice, suitable one. It would just take a long time for us to move in there because it's only available on May 5th, but it's like our best prospect, so now we're just going to stay in this particular hot hell for a month and then go to another one. Like that. But nothing changes. We're still doing all these different classes and podcasts and content. Nothing changes. It's eternal. It goes on. Apart from the fact that actually in the new place, when we move there, full warning, for 2 months from now, we won't have any internet for 2 weeks. So, I wish I had sound effects. I should maybe get like a soundboard. The sound would come on now. Anyway, you can keep. We'll be on the internet somehow. We'll go to a Starbucks and upload some updates and videos and
We're
stuff
not going
like
to
that.
have the internet? Oh, right.
Yeah, because it has to ship. Internet takes 2 weeks to ship to your new address. Well, what can be done? That's how it be. So now we're going to make the best use of what we have here now, and we're going to enjoy the live streams and stuff, right? You're going to go click those links. Okay, enough of the updates and stuff like that. Let's do a... that's good. That's very nice. That's exactly what I had in mind. You might have to bring it closer, though, for the audience to hear. It's coming.
Aww.
Aww. I heard someone say, "Oh, come on, get back, start live streaming the Bliss live streams. I watch that every morning, and it's changing my spiritual life." I heard that from the sound.
It's like the Ritviks are coming for the Bhagavad Gita class, and they get the 83 Bhagavad Gita.
That is a joke very few people will understand. Okay, so I've lost track. Let's do something new. Let's play a game. Okay? Game. I'm going to ask a question. Then you have 30 seconds to answer the question. It's a little difficult because, of course, this is not happening real time. But what is Krishna's favorite instrument? Does anyone know? And you can imagine the countdown. I don't know even the tune to that.
Guitar.
The keyboard. No, it's not. No, yeah, you have 3 options. Is it A? Probably not the one that I'm taking me so long to think of because I have to manufacture that in my brain. Drum? Is it flute? Or is it saxophone?
Saxophone.
Oh, can you imagine saxophone? Anyway, that was kind of easy. I hope. Well, I didn't even give the answer yet. It's flute. I think everyone probably knew that already. I'm gonna come up with a better quiz next time. I'm gonna make a whole game show. That's gonna be a new. That was just an idea. I got inspired, but a little not so hashed out. Little rash was the word I was trying to think of there. Okay, now, topic. My mind is going all kinds of different directions. Let us bring it back to Krishna. Let us focus on Krishna. Hare Krishna, Alina. I just saw Alina actually, just as I went on Facebook, she just accepted the invitation to our upcoming live stream event. So I would say speak of the devil, but that doesn't sound very appropriate in this circumstance. Okay, so why should you worship Krishna? That's a kind of interesting topic. The thing is that you can't not worship Krishna. Yeah, okay, so that sounds a little fanatical, but actually it is the fact. Okay, Krishna you just take Krishna in two different ways. Krishna is both God, the person, and also the impersonal, all-pervasive version of God. There's the commonly referred to version of God. Most people, when you say God, this kind of vague terminology, God, people think God as in everything, pantheism. They automatically nature, maybe some higher reality, but ultimately impersonal, everything is God. That's quite a common conception, even in modern religions. Ultimately, God is perceived of as the spirit or something of an impersonal nature, which would suggest that he's actually everything and there's not really a localized or personal form. But if you take it like that, which God also is, Krishna also is, he actually factually is all of his this impersonal manifestation, this material world, these different universes, that is also Krishna's energy. So in one sense, that is Krishna. And we are worshipping that. If you don't worship Krishna directly, everyone is worshipping Krishna's energy. Okay, so you are a very devout worshipper of Krishna, somehow or other. In the Western countries, this manifests very nicely. I was actually just walking a couple of days ago. I was doing a little japa walk, and I saw a very nice, beautiful morning sky, very nice kind of cold breeze, quiet early morning. And I saw on the side of the road, there was a lovely lady. She was walking her dog, and the dog passed a big stool right there on the street. And she had to bend down and pick up that stool and wait for the dog. She was waiting for the dog to pass the stool, waiting patiently, then packaging the stool, and she had to go walk somewhere to throw it away. So not the Western people, a lot of people all across the world, they don't worship God, but they worship dog instead. So they are taking the dog out on the dog. When the dog likes, they take the dog out to walk him. They feed him nice foodstuffs. They make sure all of his needs are attended to. They even they wash him. They wash his body. And they they wait for him to even pass stool and then pick up his stool, so he's satisfied with that. So they're worshipping a dog, actually. Okay, and also even across all social media and so many movies and TV shows, they're based around dogs. Everyone loves the dogs. They make whole stores with dog clothes and dog treats and dog toys, and everyone's talking about their different dogs, dressing their dogs up, putting their dogs on their Facebook profile pictures, on their timelines, making groups about the various dogs. They make their professions about dogs. Dog consciousness is there, especially in the Western countries. See, so somehow or other, we are worshipping something. It doesn't necessarily have to be Krishna directly, but worship is there. Or we worship, let's say for another example, maybe you don't have a dog, so that doesn't apply to you, and you're thinking, what is this Maitreya nonsense speaking? But you worship, this is practically speaking for everybody, not just the people, but even every living entity is worshipping the opposite sex. We worship if you're a man, you worship the woman. Glorify the woman. The woman is, or the man, they're made into big Hollywood stars, right? Beautiful actress, beautiful actor. And everyone's reading magazines about them, doing TV interviews with them, watching them, following their life, talking about them in the small talk, right? People go pay money to see movies with them in, watch behind the scenes with them, whatever, I already mentioned interviews, right? They get collectible figurines of them. Ashley McIntyre Prabhu, one of our list devotees, he pointed out that there was a store, some Star Wars collectible action figure store. They're very expensive action figures, kind of like a deity of Krishna, but way more lame version. And you can buy this expensive collectible figure, and you can put it on your stand, and you clean it regularly, make sure it stays in pristine condition, look at it every morning, think about it, probably offer it foodstuffs, I don't know, so expensive. They worship this figurine, some character that's played by some famous actor or whatever. So, or they more on the topic, more on the point. Sorry, they people glorify the whole Western civilization. Actually, the modern civilization in general is based. The focal point, Vishnava Chakravarti Thakura, one of the great acharyas in our disciplic succession, he actually says the focal point of the material world is sex life. Everything is based around this sex life, the glorification of the opposite sex, and sex life with that respective sex. Everyone is going to work very hard, spending their hard-earned money to please the opposite sex, right? Buy flowers, buy chocolates, buy houses. Right? Their whole life is based around pleasing the opposite sex. So that is worship. And pretty much everyone falls into this category. There's very few people, and if you don't have some other girl or boy that you're trying to please, you very much desire that. You might be lonely, but still, that's lingering in the mind. It's practically impossible to be free from that desire. And this also applies to all the living entities, including the dogs. The dogs are also doing some kind of dance, barking, to get the attention of the opposite sex. Dogs, of course, they basically just rape. They don't really have any discrimination. But more classy, for example, there are birds that put on huge colorful displays, and they do kind of dances, and they sing all kinds of songs to attract the opposite sex. So that is also a worship. So practically speaking, you can see that everyone is worshipping. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly Krishna, but worship is always there. Even if you go to some, let's say, Aboriginal tribes in some unadvanced or undiscovered island, which would now be discovered if you went there and saw these tribes, but whatever. So some Aboriginal tribes, they don't have iPhones there, certainly. They're hunting, or they're dressing themselves with leaves or whatever. Very unadvanced, right? They have no contact with other civilizations, concepts of God. But still, they worship some wonderful manifestation like thunder in the sky, or huge waves, or massive mountains. They worship something great, right? Something greater than them. There's a natural propensity of everybody is to worship. It manifests in different ways, but worship as a principle is there. Okay, so it's not a question of should Krishna be worshipped. It's actually the fact that Krishna is being worshipped all the time by everyone, just sometimes indirectly and sometimes directly. Okay, so, but the problem with worship of the impersonal manifestation of Krishna, which has so many different aspects, and you could say not varieties, aspects is a proper word, is that worship is for a material gain. That worship is exploitative. Why people worship anything? Just like the Christians, they say, "Oh God, please give us our daily bread." Okay, so that's quite an elevated worship. That's actually what they say. They worship God. They go to church. They proclaim to be religious. I'm not speaking about Christians in general. This is a religious function. Oh God, give us protection. Oh God, thank you for the food. Oh God, kill my enemies. Okay, so God is worshipped maybe in human society at a more elevated stage of consciousness, but still it is for one's own benefit. God becomes my servant. Right? And then when God can't serve me, then I become disappointed and I give up that worship. It's a conditional worship. Srila Prabhupada, he gives an example very nicely many times that in the World War II, German women, they went to church and they prayed to God that their husbands and their brothers and sons would come back from the war, so they could continue giving them sense gratification in whatever capacity, of course. And then when they all died in the war, these German women, they gave up religious practice and they became atheistic. So that worship was conditional. Not really, it's not actual worship. So the reason we worship in this material world, generally speaking, is because the modus operandi, you could say, of the material world, that why we're here is, or how it's working is sense gratification. That's the basis. So you can also apply this to, like I said before, worship of the opposite sex. When two couples, they're worshipping each other, glorifying each other, right? Spending all their focus, their attention, their money, their energy on that person. It's so-called love or glorification or worship. But then, when the other person can't fulfill the sense gratification anymore, either the spark isn't there, or they become less beautiful, they get in some car accident or something, or they just get old and wrinkly, right? Then the love or the worship that stops, they get a divorce, or they break up, or they cheat, right? So conditional again. So this is unsatisfactory worship, because if that condition is not met, then the worship stops. That's not real worship, because when we refer to worship, especially worship of Krishna directly, it's eternal. So these other worships, because they're conditional, therefore they're temporary by nature, and they can't be necessarily counted as real worship. And also, that is dissatisfying by nature, because they're conditional, and so many things can disturb the worship. Therefore, we feel dissatisfied. Besides that, the very vehicle of worship in the material world is the material body. So that itself is temporary. Therefore, nothing you worship in this material world, because everything in this material world is temporary. The body you worship those things with is also temporary. Therefore, it's always, even if those conditions are met perfectly and the worship goes on very nicely, it's always checked by the temporary nature. So it's never satisfactory. Right? So, yes. It's impossible to feel satisfied by such worship. For example, I was walking just down the street just now, here in East Ham in London, and there are many Hindu shop owners. And you can see there's Ganesh or Lakshmi or some demigod Shiva being worshipped in the store. Why are they worshipping in the store? They're worshipping in the store so the store will become very successful. They get money. Right? But if the store wasn't successful, then there's no need to worship that demigod. So that worship is not out of any genuine devotional place of devotion. It's just simply for some temporary benefit. So Krishna actually confirms this in the 4th chapter and 12th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Okay, so we want something. Demigods can also apply to a powerful man, like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. You worship some powerful man to get something out of him, or you worship your boss. Right? You work for your boss, you sign the contract, whatever. You work very hard for him, worship him, give him some praise, laugh at his jokes, even though they're not very funny. So he'll give you your paycheck. Right? So the worship is going on, but it's for some material success. So therefore it's dissatisfactory, because if we don't get the material success, or even if we do, it's temporary. So that kind of worship is not actually fulfilling, and therefore it's not something we should pursue. Krishna says in the 7th chapter and 20th verse that the people who are less intelligent, they worship demigods. Or in other words, they worship someone other than Krishna, the eternal person, Krishna. That eternal service is dissatisfying. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya prays that Ashlisha Vapara Vritam Panashtamam, this shloka from Lord Chaitanya's famous devotional prayers, where he elaborates on this. It's a very deep elaboration on the science of Krishna worship, devotional service, causeless devotional love of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya says that even if you break my heart, Krishna, even if you're not present before me, even if you step all over me, still I love you. Still I will continue to glorify you. So that unimpeded worship is because of pure love. And that pure love can only be applied to Krishna, because Krishna is the eternal person. And that relationship we have with Krishna is original. The soul is part and parcel, not the body, not the senses, but the soul, the person within the body who's powering the body, who we all are. That eternal soul that's lasting throughout all the different changes of the body's changing many times, but the soul is still there, the self is remaining. You're still here even though the body you had when you were a small child is gone. That eternal soul is eternally related with the eternal God or eternal person, Krishna. So therefore the loving relationship we have with Krishna, the worship we have with Krishna, is the only thing which actually satisfies the soul. Everything else is temporary. You're eternal. How can it satisfy you? Okay? So the worship we do in the material world is dissatisfactory. But how do I know that Krishna is the supreme? Right? If we want to worship, okay, we should worship Krishna, we should worship God. Krishna means God. So we should worship God, we should worship the supreme, we should worship something eternal. But how do I know that Krishna specifically is the supreme? Okay? There's a very simple answer. To understand anything about Krishna, you have to contact a higher authority. It's not possible to learn about transcendence, that which is beyond the range of your limited sense perception, that which is spiritual, goes beyond even the finest material substance, which is intelligence, right? You have the sense objects, you have the material elements. That's very gross. Earth is very gross. If you try to run into a brick wall, you can't do it. You're going to break your nose. Very gross. A little finer is water, okay? You can dive, you can enter water, but still there's some heavy resistance. So then through the gross elements you get eventually to ether, which still has, if you, for example, you play very loud kirtan, bliss kirtan, you will hear the mridanga, boom, and there'll be a big bass. And that vibration, you will also feel that vibration. It's perceptible by the senses. You'll feel it on the eardrums, sometimes even on the skin. So ether is a gross element, but it's a little bit finer. It's certainly more fine than earth. Then you have even more fine is the mind, right? You can't perceive the mind, but everyone knows I have mind, and we're working with the mind. And then even finer than the mind is the intelligence, right? Which is very subtle, and that's controlling the mind, determining. It's quite subtle. And even more subtle than the intelligence is the soul. So the soul is actually beyond our current perception. It's in a sleeping state, but so to understand the soul, which is beyond the perception, you must contact a higher authority. Just like how the sun, the actual nature of the sun to us with our limited eyes, we can't perceive what the sun is really like. It just looks like a little glowing ball in the sky, but actually it's a gigantic ball of fire, right? That apparently, if we were any closer to, our eyebrows would just fry off. Okay, so to actually understand the nature of the sun, you have to get a book of knowledge, some science book. I don't say that science is exactly a very reliable field of study, but just for practical sakes and purposes, you can understand the example. To understand about the nature of the sun, you have to contact a science book. Similarly, to understand the nature of the soul and the nature of God, you have to contact a book of knowledge. That book is Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna himself, God himself, is speaking. The highest authority is speaking about himself. So Krishna says there in the Bhagavad Gita, the 7th chapter and the 22nd verse, Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod. He, meaning a materialist, worships a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Okay? A particular demigod. And the demigod is given powers by one particular person, Krishna, the supreme. There is a supreme. It's not that all the demigods, all the powerful personalities are all equal. No, there is a supreme personality. Now, all the Vedic scriptures, or scriptures which like I mentioned before, the scriptures that speak of transcendence, they all point to Krishna being the supreme. There are many, 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 many verses to say this, but I selected for this podcast, to keep it concise, I selected some of the most prominent verses from the Vedic scriptures. One is from the Brahma Samhita. Actually, two are from the Brahma Samhita, but the first one I'm going to quote is, and the Brahma Samhita is spoken by Lord Brahma. I might mention herein, Lord Brahma is the most intelligent human being in the material universe. Okay? If you thought Einstein was intelligent, you don't know nothing. Lord Brahma has got 4 heads. He's got 4 brains. Okay? Just conceive how intelligent Lord Brahma is. 4 brains. And he's sitting on a lotus flower. Okay? This may seem beyond your capacity, even beyond your imagination, but actually it is the fact. We know from the Vedic scriptures that is the fact. Lord Brahma is sitting on a lotus flower in the highest planetary system. He is the one who first understood Vedic knowledge, and he distributed it to the whole universe. And he's the creator of the universe. So very intelligent personality, and he has a songbook, you could say, where when he got a direct vision of direct God realization. He saw the spiritual world, he saw Krishna directly, and he noted down what his experience was. So this is an authoritative scripture, Brahma Samhita. It's recognized by all classes of philosophers and spiritualists in India, scholars. And in that, Lord Brahma says, Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchidananda Vigraha Anadirare Govindaha Savakarana Karanam. It's a very, very beautiful shloka. And it means that Krishna there are many controllers. Okay, in this material world, you have one man is controlling another. Right? There's a boss, he's controlling a worker. The worker is controlling his family, his wife. The wife is controlling the children are controlling the dog. Many controllers, but they're all controlled by another person. Right? We're stuck in a big network of control. No one can say that he's actually independent. But Krishna, Lord Brahma says, he is Swarat, as it said in the Bhagavatam. He is completely independent, the supreme controller. Okay, so that is God. He who you can't find anyone who controls him. That is God. That's one definition, the supreme controller. And he's the cause of all causes. No one is equal to him. He's the first person, the Adipurusha, the cause of all causes. So this is a definition of God. Okay, so Lord Brahma says Krishna is that person. Alright? That person must be there. Now whether it's Krishna or another, but that person must, first of all, must exist. And Lord Brahma says it's Krishna. Then Lord Shiva, there is another very powerful personality. He's often conceived of in Hinduism. If you have any background with Hinduism, so-called Hinduism, you may understand that Lord Shiva is sometimes conceived of as the supreme, as God. But it's actually not the fact. Lord Shiva himself says in the Padma Purana that of all worship, Vishnu worship is the worst. Is the best. Hopefully he wouldn't say is the worst, because then my whole presentation would be completely kicked from the face. He says, Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnuradhanam Param. My dear Parvati, that's the wife of Lord Shiva, of all kinds of worship of Lord Vishnu is the best. Okay, so that's what Lord Shiva says. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Maheshwara, I can't remember the Sanskrit name for Lord Brahma, These are the two most powerful personalities in this universe. They create the universe, and Lord Shiva, he destroys the whole universe. And these two personalities, they say, Lord Vishnu, aka Lord Krishna, is the best, and worship of him is the best. Actually, Lord Shiva goes on later to say that worship of the devotee of Krishna is the best, but that's a whole other subject matter. Okay, now, these are Puranas, Samhitas, Puranas. If you don't accept these particular scriptures, sometimes there are scholars that say, no, you can't go to Puranas. Puranas, they're just passed down through their folk tales. Okay? That's okay. You want to go to Vedas? That's alright. So, Rig Veda, 1st Skanda, 22nd chapter, 20th verse says, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada. Translates, the demigods are always looking to that supreme abode of Vishnu. Supreme abode of Vishnu. Paramam Padam. The demigods are always looking. So it's defined here. You just break it down. The demigods are looking to the supreme abode of Vishnu. The name is there, and there is one personality, and he has a supreme abode. Right? So this is what the Vedas say. Not Puranas, not Samhitas, the Vedas themselves say. Vishnu's abode is the supreme, and the demigods are always looking to it. Okay, another verse from the Brahma Samhita. Okay, Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevayamam. There's another popular demigoddess, or goddess, from a Hindu perspective, that people conceive of. I was just walking outside, actually, here in East Ham, London. There's a humongous Mahalakshmi temple. Okay, gigantic, very opulent temple. Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune, the source of all wealth. And Lord Brahma says about her, or more specifically about Govinda, he says, I worship Govinda, the primeval lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees and always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or gopis. Okay, so hundreds of thousands of this goddess, Lakshmi, worship Krishna. So if you thought that Lakshmi, it's not Lord Brahma, it's not Lord Shiva, it's not the other demigods because they're all saying Vishnu is supreme. Maybe Lakshmi is the supreme. No, Lakshmi is serving Krishna. Hundreds of thousands of them are serving Krishna. Okay, so here from the Vedic evidence, it is clear that Krishna is the supreme. Now, sometimes people say that these different scriptures are pointing to different supremes. So who is the supreme? Sometimes they say Lord Shiva is the supreme. There are different verses that say Lord Shiva. Some verses say Lord Brahma. Some verses say Indra. Okay? And some say Vishnu. So don't be fanatical. Don't go to Vishnu. But that's actually not the case. Okay? Because there are different Puranas in different modes of material existence. And Srila Prabhupada explains this here. Okay? So this is a quote from Srila Prabhupada. There are men in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And to reclaim all these conditioned souls, there are 18 Puranas. 6 Puranas are meant for those in the mode of goodness, 6 for those in the mode of passion, and 6 for those in the mode of ignorance. The Padma Purana is written for those in the mode of goodness. Because there are different types of men, there are many different Vedic rituals. In the Vedic literatures, there are descriptions of rituals and ceremonies in which a goat may be sacrificed in the presence of the goddess Kali. This is described in the Markandeya Purana, but this Purana is meant for the instruction of those in the mode of ignorance. Okay? So, there are different scriptures written for people who have different mentalities, and for those people who have different desires, mentalities, and natures, there's a different supreme demigod for them to worship so they can fulfill their desires and get gradually purified so that they can eventually come to the transcendental position. And in the transcendental position, there is a Purana for those also, for the Paramahamsas, or the Transcendentalists. And that is the Mahapurana, Amala Puranam, Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so this Purana is approved by great scholars, acharyas, yogis, authorities, as the spotless Puranam above all kinds of karma, reactions to karma, or different natures that are products of material nature. This is a scripture which is purely on the spiritual platform. Okay, so it's the most authoritative scripture, and that scripture is completely, all 18,000 verses are simply pointing to the supremacy of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Alright, so, a couple more points to cover here. Now, some people, they say, that's okay, Puranas and Samhitas and whatever. What about Brahman? What about the impersonal, supreme spiritual whole? Okay, Brahman, that's got to be the supreme. And this is very, very common in spiritual circles. People generally think that God, if God has a form, that is an illusion. God can't have a form because God is everything. We're all God. How can God be a person? Okay, so they say Brahman is the supreme. But Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Okay, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. Krishna says he is the basis. If you don't think that's enough evidence, maybe somebody translated the shloka a little differently. Just to confirm it even more, Krishna says in the I can't remember where this is in the Bhagavad Gita, but the last one was in the 14th chapter, in the 27th verse. This one also Krishna says, I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless, is subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Okay, so Brahman is again subordinate to Krishna. This big impersonal manifestation, it's manifested from Krishna. And that you can see also, you can understand logically. The personality is always superior to the impersonality. You have some COVID. Okay, the COVID is made by someone, and it's controlled by someone. It's also cured by someone, right? And ultimately, the COVID itself is also a soul. So that's not a very good example. Let's say a rock. Okay, a rock or a car. A car is an impersonal manifestation. There's no consciousness in a car, and therefore, if you just leave a car, it's not going to complain. It's going to stay there. It's going to tolerate the different weathers, whether it's raining or snowing or belting heat. It doesn't care. It's a car. It's not until a person comes and drives the car that it moves. Okay? So personal always is superior to impersonal. It's the moving force, the active force, the controller. Controller is conscious. Therefore, personality is always superior to impersonality, and that must also reflect in the absolute sense. So the impersonal manifestation also is controlled by a person. So that's Krishna. So there's no demigod you can worship, that's the supreme, and even impersonal Brahman is not supreme. Krishna is the supreme, and he's establishing this in the Bhagavad Gita, and we can establish it also through logic. Okay? many different logic. We could be here forever talking about the different logical arguments for why the God is a person. But there's one other point that I think is the icing on the cake. Why you should worship Krishna. Okay, now you can't not worship Krishna, but to worship Krishna directly is very much beneficial, not just for you, but for every other person. Okay, now, why is this? It's explained very clearly in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the scripture I was mentioning before. So I'm going to now read a shloka from the Srimad Bhagavatam because that explains it much nicer than I could ever do. And Srila Prabhupada also elaborates. Okay, so this is from the 4th canto, 1st chapter, 37th verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yata taro mula nisachinena tripyanti tatskandha bhujapashakaha prano aparachayatindriyanam tataiva sarvahanam achuchejya. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk,
branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods, who are part and parcel of that Supreme Personality. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes people ask why this Krishna consciousness movement simply advocates worship of Krishna to the exclusion of the demigods. The answer is given in this verse. The example of pouring water on the root of a tree is very appropriate. In Bhagavad Gita 15.1 it is said, Urdhva mulam adaha sakam. This cosmic manifestation has expanded downward, and the root is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the Lord confirms in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Aham sarvasya prabhavaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Krishna is the root of everything. Therefore, rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, some pop-up just came up on my screen. Krishna Seva means automatically serving all the demigods. Sometimes it is argued, let's just break it down here, because there's another point coming up. So, the root, or the first cause of everything, that which everything is emanating, right? Energy implies a source of energy. When you think of light in your room, automatically you understand there's a powerhouse, right? You plug your computer in, you're listening to this on your computer, or your phone maybe. So you plug it in to charge it into the wall, and the wall is also coming from the powerhouse, right? So many things are being nourished by the sun. The sun is a source of energy for every living thing in this material world. Right, we're being nurtured by the sun. So whenever we think of energy, there is the source of the energy. There are the sun rays, and then there's the sun. There is the power, then there's the powerhouse. So similarly, everything is energy, and that means there is also an energetic source to that energy, and that source is conscious. The source must be conscious, because we are conscious. So the fact that we are conscious means that consciousness must exist in the source, otherwise where does it come from? And just like we already established, personality is always superior to impersonality. So therefore, and just logically also you can understand, that without consciousness there could have not been a first cause, right? Just like a rock, or a car. It's not going to move. The car's not going to move until a person is in it. It's impersonal. It has no free will. It cannot make a conscious decision to move. It's not until a person comes in and moves it that it moves. So similarly, all this energy cannot expand, cannot be created without a conscious decision to do so. So the first cause is a person. Although it may be beyond our conception, we should not try to apply our mundane experience and current conception of personality to the supreme person, the transcendent person, Krishna. So the root of everything must also be conscious. And if you serve that person, because he is the root of everything, everything is coming from him, then automatically everything else is served. See, everyone is trying to serve something. Everyone's trying to worship something. We're trying to worship or please everyone in the world. We're trying to worship the masses. We're trying to worship the opposite sex. We're trying to worship the animals, right? The dog, right? We're trying to worship the nation, or so many things. But it's not possible to worship everything. It's not possible to satisfy everything because you are limited. You're a little tiny jiva, and so many people have tried to serve, tried to worship everything, tried to please everyone, and it's just not possible. Because you're limited, you must neglect some people. You must neglect some aspect of the worship. And even if somehow or other you manage to worship this whole planet, you can't worship the whole universe. And somehow or other, if you were able to worship the whole universe, if you became so powerful, you can't worship or please or serve all of the different universes. Simply not within your capacity. So, worship of Krishna, who's the source of all these different universes, automatically, just like how if you water the root of a tree, the water travels to all the different branches automatically. So one spot you're watering, but everything is being nurtured. Or another example is if you supply food to the stomach, all the different parts of the body are automatically nourished. There's no need, and it's not possible, to supply food to the different parts of the body. And Prabhupada actually explains this later on. So we're all trying to serve, we're all trying to love, we're all trying to worship, but it's not possible to have complete service, complete love, or complete worship without worshipping the root of everything, Krishna. Okay, so the next portion is not so much relevant to what we're reading, so I'm just going to skip down here. Modern society is involved in various types of philanthropic works, humanitarian works, and so on, but people do not know that these activities will never be successful unless Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is brought into the center. One may ask, what harm is there in worshipping Krishna and the different parts of the body, the demigods? And the answer is also given in this verse. The point is that by supplying food to the stomach, the indriyas, or the senses, are automatically satisfied. If one tries to feed his eyes or ears independently, the result is only havoc. Simply by supplying food to the stomach, we satisfy all of the senses. It is neither necessary nor feasible to render separate service to the individual senses. The conclusion is that by serving Krishna, Krishna Seva, everything is complete. As confirmed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 2262, Krishna Bhakti Kaliye Sarva Karma Kritahaya. If everyone is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. Okay, very nice. Prabhupada is right on the point here, of course. So if you try to put food in your bum, you will never be satisfied. Okay, so trying to satisfy one's senses, trying to become happy without serving the root of your own existence, the source of your own existence, you'll never be satisfied. You must, to be wholly satisfied, you must satisfy the root. So that is the main reason to worship Krishna. Of course, service to Krishna is causeless. Actually, in the pure stage, it's totally causeless. So there's no reason, in one sense, to worship Krishna, but it is perfect, and everything else is accounted for in that worship. It's constitutional, it's eternal, therefore it can't have a cause. But by doing it, everything is automatically becomes harmonious. Everything else becomes perfect, because Krishna, the root of everything, is satisfied. So there are many other points that can be brought up, but just to keep it concise, and also now I will have to go to bed. That is why Krishna should be worshipped. And it's not fanatical. Actually, it's rather logical. And it's actually more fanatical to stick with the worship of everything else that's not Krishna. Because there's no reason to do like that. It's simply frustrating, and it's blind. There's no logic to worshipping your dog, and you'll never be happy by doing that. But if you worship Krishna, your dog will automatically be worshipped, and you yourself will be satisfied. So I hope that was comprehensive enough on the subject matter of why Krishna should be worshipped. If you like the podcast, you can leave a like on the podcast. You can also subscribe to the Expand the Bliss YouTube channel. And you can also give us a donation so we can continue making these podcasts. We have many different donation platforms to satisfy your various donation senses. I don't know if that's an actual sense. But if you're feeling, if you're feeling charitable, you can go on our Patreon or our Just Giving or our PayPal, and you can give a little something. It doesn't have to be a lot, but if you give something, it does show that you appreciate what we do, and it helps us continue making more content. And also, you get entitled to cool rewards like ebooks. We have ebooks that are different expositions of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. They will help you understand the philosophy. They will help you advance in spiritual life. His Great Spiritual Prabhu put a lot of work into these books. They are beautifully composed by Makanchora Prabhu. Nice pictures have been added. They're very nice books. So you can become a free downloader of these books if you give us a donation. You can also buy them on our store individually. Or you can become a Patreon, which is a very nice system where you become a monthly donor, you commit, and then you get entitled to all of the, if you become a very high level Patreon, you become entitled to all of the ebooks that will ever come out. What a cool reward. So, yes, this is why Krishna should be worshipped fanatically, because everything else is contained within that worship. So thank you for listening. Please go and worship Krishna. It's very simple. You just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's all. It's 16 words. And automatically everything else is satisfied, including yourself, because you're part and parcel of that whole, that absolute truth. You're one of the fingers on the body, and you're bringing food to the stomach by chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. So, thank you for listening. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai.